let's just get straight into a couple of questions. I want you to tell me a little bit more about the Nuggets crypto community, mate. Heard so much about it, but I'm not sure the audience knows the full details, mate.
Yeah, so we do all our free YouTube videos and all that sort of stuff, but when it all started to take off, it really became pretty chaotic on social media. So I wanted to start a group, I guess, that was a little bit more controlled and where everyone was, really passionate about it. So we started a private group, and that's now got 1,300 members, which is everyone from beginners to traders and investors. Yeah, where we just talk about the news and have discussions every day. So that's our main focus at Nuggets News now. Awesome, great stuff. Thanks for that. And let's cross it to the panel now. A few little scatterbrain questions here. So we sort of have just come off the back of the Consensus conference in New York. Few of us were there. Did anyone go to New York and see any of the amazing projects? A couple of people. That's good. But Fred Schebesta was there. Fred, tell us what happened in New York. What interesting projects did you see? And what was the feeling like? How many people were there? All that sort of stuff. Give us a little synopsis.
Yeah, I think Tim, you were there as well, and which is good. I think this year was a lot less Lambos and more taxis. And what you saw, I think, was I think there's a couple of trends starting. A lot of talk about IEOs. I went to a presentation. I don't know if everyone's seen these. Is it the repackaged ICO? It's an interesting concept, and I think there's a lot of people moving in that trajectory, and I think there's a lot of very interesting projects going that way. And I think that the thinking on it is that some of the best marketing you can do, because some people make a few dollars, and then they get to know the project, which otherwise they might not have. So I went and saw Huawei's IEO platform and what they're doing there, and I think that's very interesting to look at IEOs. I think a lot of the, last year was extremely hypey. I mean, it was unbearable, the selling, it was too much. But this year, it was very much, people who were there to do business, people who were there to actually put things live, things that are actually being built, things that are genuine and sort of going forward. I was actually on a panel about STOs. I was on one of the talks, and I think when it comes to STOs, the sort of scene is there's a lot of noise and shuffling about this, but the actual liquidity right now is quite small on Open Finance, for example. It does trade a little bit, but I think a lot of people are looking at actual STOs now as blockchain potentially solving the clearing and not necessarily the broking or exchange. So they're looking at it if you look at the NASDAQ, right? The NASDAQ used to be basically the, let's say, I was going to say the Cryptopia of shares. It used to be very much where doggy stocks traded, penny stocks. And then all the tech companies came in, right? And they were, tech companies like Microsoft didn't used to be seen as a very popular stock. And the NASDAQ took all these tech companies in. And these tech companies just took off, and the NASDAQ itself then took off as well, which is very interesting. And I think in the same way, some of these STOs are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to find their angle that's different from shares. And some of the challenges with that, I think, are how do you price art? How do you make a model? If you're going to high frequency trade that with a bid and an offer, how are you going to model art price or a very a priceless car or whatever it may be? I think there are new models that are being created, and there are a lot of very smart people working on it. But I think it's going to take a lot longer right now before STOs become the next thing. I think what I also met, I actually met some real OGs like Adam Back from Blockstream, and they really filled me with an extreme amount of confidence about Bitcoin and where it's going to go. And one of the things I find, I wanted to share this, I think it's probably one of the number one insights that I took was, I think a lot of people are thinking about what's going to happen with mining and transaction fees. As the block reward goes down, right? So May 2020 and those kind of things are coming up. What's going to happen? And I think what he filled me with the confidence is that, and I think it's quite interesting, is maybe the exchanges themselves eventually might become miners. I know that sounds quite insane, but they have a huge incentive, right, to keep the blockchain and Bitcoin going. And I think they're thinking about, Blockstream's thinking about how to keep Bitcoin going after those block rewards go down. So there are some actually really smart people working on that. They've obviously got their side chains with Liquid and their SEO platform now as well. But people are really, really actively building on Bitcoin itself, and I sort of took a lot of confidence from that about the market. And I think the difference between last year was the market was going like this, and this year the market was going up, and so people were like getting happy again. And so I think there's a lot more focus on that, and people coming back into the market.
Awesome, great. We'll cross to Tim Lee in a minute, but I wanted to ask Grant a question that got me thinking trading. So Grant, you're launching the new Mine digital exchange platform here soon, and I heard through the grapevine about some custody products and also insurance. I know the guys at IR have got an insurance product. They're first to launch an insurance product.
Fourth in the world.
Fourth in the world, okay, fourth in the world. But Grant, do you want to just give us a quick overview? Maybe do you want to introduce mine as well? But I want you to talk about custody insurance for for the audience.
So basically, the main purpose of mine will be focusing on fiat to crypto pairs. So AUD USD pairs initially, then also looking to add stablecoin pairs as we advance. And the other main thing that we're working on at the moment is in pretty much final negotiations about securing an AFSL, which will allow us to do derivatives both to retail and wholesale clients. And we are also at the moment, also just finalising a custody and insurance offering. Be very similar to the ones that the guys at IR are offering, but we've got one little thing up our sleeve I think will be quite interesting to a lot of people in this room, but we're just sort of probably still another 2 months away from unveiling that.
Great. Okay, I'm going to cross to the audience. Have we got any questions in the audience? Okay, soon. That's good. Jonathan, quick question for you, mate. What is BitTrade seeing in the market currently?
Well, a bit of optimism, which is nice. I think where we play as well, being an aggregator and acting as broker, we've seen a lot of people coming back with their SMSFs. I think that's maybe partly because people were a bit reticent when it came to the election, and now it's pretty clear that SMSFs are a pretty viable structure to manage assets under. So we're seeing a lot of people like that coming back to the market, looking at long-term positions. So that just kind of shows you, I guess, the attitude that people take to crypto, which is this idea that it's a long-term position. I think that's still fair as far as the way you should think about it, unless you're day trading and kind of really getting algorithmic. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we've been seeing. A lot of people coming just back to Bitcoin, and then as you saw it kind of climb very quickly, a very similar pattern to I guess 18 months ago, where people immediately started wanting to diversify because they were worried that they'd missed a run. So similar patterns in the market to 17 months ago, but nowhere near as extreme, and also a different type of customer base. Like so, for us, it's been less about people who are I guess unfamiliar with markets, and more customers who are coming in who are very familiar with markets. So a more sophisticated kind of attitude to understanding how the risk in this investment plays out. They're very aware, especially from the experience, that it could go the other way. So yeah, it's been positive.
Great, awesome. Any questions from the audience? Great, we've got one hand there, two hands there. Great night tonight. Okay, let me keep going.
Don't ask them.
While you guys keep thinking of some questions. You're going to run me out of mine. But okay, George, we had you here a few months ago, I think it was now, which was excellent. We had a night on stablecoins, very informative. Since then, I think Nuggets, we've had a couple of Aussie stablecoins launch in the last couple of months. That's about right. So George, tell me, mate, what is happening in crypto, and what's the next thing in crypto?
Yeah, interesting question. Well, it's on. Here?
And the light's off, it's on here.
Hello? Okay, cool. So I just want to talk about STOs, I guess, and IEOs based off of what Fred said. So the trend in IEOs has been pretty fierce, and almost every exchange has gotten onto it, and every exchange is trying to do them. But it's kind of a fundamentally broken model at this point, and I don't know that it's going to last as it is, because what is happening is like the seed investors are getting punished in these deals. Instead of being the ones who are the first ones out, like in most deals that they're in, they're the ones who are being trapped. And like, if you get into the private rounds of these deals, you get unlocked to a certain extent. It's the pre-IEO money, which allows for market making activities. So it's expensive to do these IEOs. you need market makers to support the price, obviously, which makes the exchanges comfortable with it and also keeps the price and interest in it. But then you have these IEOs which are happening, which are like small amounts of lottery tickets on the exchanges. But it's really hard for a lot of these projects to keep and support the price over time. Some of them and the exchanges themselves there's paydays involved for exchanges, but there's also other elements to it where projects don't want to pay like millions of dollars for market making to support the float that's coming onto the market and support the price and have stability in the price. So it's kind of like in the next iteration of it, what's going to happen, because like seed investors can't get punished. And in most of these deals, like I've worked on quite a few of them, I invest in them a lot. Seed is always the one who's getting hurt the most in these deals, and that's just not acceptable, and I don't think it's going to be able to last. So like what happens with a lot of this is that you see dumping happening a lot, especially as people get to be unlocked over time. So it's not really a great model. As far as STOs go, I'd say that Fred's spot on about that, but like the real problem is like the metrics around it. Like you're dealing with giant unknowns. So like a lot of these are like rev share tokens or tokens where you're trying to figure out like a percent. Like, so how much of my sales do I actually want to give to everyone as a result of the fundraising? I don't actually know the answer to that, right? Because I don't know how much sales I'm going to have. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm raising a ton of money, but at the same time, I want to give some kind of reward and incentive back. So it's like these hardened fine lines around some of this stuff is really hard to figure out like early on in the game. The other problem with security tokens, obviously, is that the infrastructure is not there yet around exchanges and stuff like that. Open finance is there. There's a bunch in Singapore which are coming on board. What's it called? T0 is going to start to do some. But like we're still a little bit a ways away from that happening. So it hasn't been as attractive of a model as it may be. But like it's definitely something that a lot of people are starting to explore because it's an alternative to equity, but it's also not an IEO or an ICO. Gives you some kind of compliance around what you're doing. Maybe less interesting. Maybe the multiples won't be the same. Maybe they'll be better, but it's still like really early in all that as well.
Good.
Yeah.
So, which is awesome to lead me on to the next question, talking regulation. But big round of applause for Jonathan, who's joining us in here tonight from ASIC. And I was really honoured to have him here. When was it, Jonathan? At the beginning of the year? At our last STO talk, was it? No, it was last year, wasn't it, Nugget? You were up for it as well.
Yeah.
So that's good. So talking about regulation, Tim Lee, you've just come back from Malta, and I know you've been talking to the regulators in Malta. Let's just give us a synopsis of what's happening in Malta re the STO regulation, and then maybe Jonathan can couple that with Australia,
Sure.
and we can get some heavy-hitting debate happening.
I think the first thing that hit me about Malta, and I'll echo exactly what Fred said, in the US, it's very conservative, incredibly conservative, and all the conversation is about, oh, this is going to take a long time, don't know what's going to happen, yada, yada, yada. And there's a lot of regulatory arbitrage that's going on. I met one of the exchanges at the Bid Angels event, which is an angel investment block, and they are registering in Bermuda, and they're about to go live. And when I went to Malta, it was very, very different. The conversation very much with the Maltese regulators, I mean, just to give you an indication, Malta's a small place. There are about 480,000 people that live on Malta. And I was at a pool party on a Saturday night in shorts and a T-shirt, and I had a few of these, to be honest. And there were quite a few people talking just about AML KYC, and I got talking to this guy, and he was the chief operating officer of the regulator. And I was sort of exploring this whole sort of thing that I call the Uninformed Paradox, where all of us can go to a casino or a race course and we can spend as much as we like and nobody gives a rat's ass about that, right? Yet unless we're an accredited investor, we can't actually invest in an STO or in a pre-IPO, which is kind of crazy. So we've been working on some sort of sub-ideas behind our main sort of corporate funding platform, and I pitched this concept directly to the regulator. And 45 minutes later, we were one-on-one just talking, and I've put a presentation to them, and we're waiting to see. Malta is setting themselves up to be the leading edge of regulation, and they have a lot of relationships with other smaller jurisdictions, like Liechtenstein, like Dubai, Estonia, the Isle of Man, Gibraltar, a whole variety of smaller jurisdictions. And these other jurisdictions are following on from what they do. These other jurisdictions want to know what Malta is doing, so they can follow that model. So it was the idea that the feeling I got in the States was that regulations coming from the top down in terms of, here are the laws, here are the regulations that date back to the 1930s and 40s, and it's revolution. We've got to change that. It's going to be a nightmare. In Malta, the attitude was, how can we come from the bottom up? And very much, it's this layer of the lower level retail investors that we were trying to promote. And very much they're embracing that 100% in terms of coming from the bottom up. And I think we're going to see, from what I can see, there'll be two forces. There'll be a sort of a bit of a shit sandwich in the middle, I guess, sort of coming from from the up, down, and down, up. And I think we will see a meeting of those over time. I suspect the levels coming from the SEC and other larger jurisdictions will be a lot slower than the smaller jurisdictions who've got that ability to be flexible on their feet. And I think, if I'm honest, I think Australia actually has the chance to be the fast follower if we actually are nimble on our feet, in my opinion. Because there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening in a lot of these smaller jurisdictions. And if we can follow some of those models and just see how they progress and then be a fast follower, we've got an opportunity, I think, to get a lot of investment and a lot of structures within the Australian market. But certainly, I think top down and bottom up is where I'd see it coming from.
Shit sandwich, fast follower, Tim Lee. You heard it here first. Okay, I've got a few more questions asked, but there was a couple of questions here in the audience. Tom, we on? Check 1, 2. Oh, here. Catch.
I actually just wanted to know what the backgrounds of the presenters were, that's all.
Great question. Let's run through that very quickly, gentlemen.
Okay, Tim Lee, we've got a new project that's just come out of stealth mode called Fractonium. We're creating a digital funding platform that's going to turn corporate funding on its head. Instead of looking at debt and equity, we're looking at blended structures of debt, equity, and a variety of tokens underneath it all.
Very concise. Jonathan Miller. From BitTrade, we have kind of two main streams. We've got a trading platform, which is a market aggregator with a self-service portal and an OTC desk, so you can do larger value trades. And then we also do consulting. I do a fair bit of work in consulting around blockchain and building systems, and happy to talk about that tonight if anyone's interested. And I think Dave has a couple of questions around that.
My name's Fred Schebesta. I'm one of the co-founders of Finder.com.au, also Finder.com, obviously. And also, we've started an OTC desk called HiveX.com, where we do over-the-counter trading. We pride ourselves on premium service.
My name's George. I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none.
What's your URL?
What's semantics.com?
Semantics.com. Check it out. You'll love it.
So Grant Colfer, as DJ said, now heading up Mind Digital. Prior to that, had a 15-year career as a proprietary trader and portfolio manager.
Great. Nuggets?
So I'm a pharmacist by trade, but I've been into Bitcoin since 2012, and where Nuggets News is Australia's largest source for crypto education on YouTube, podcast, website, all that sort of thing.
Awesome. While you're there, Nuggets, tell us what's happening at Nuggets. What's new? Just tell us something interesting.
We've just employed a writer because all those articles was probably one of the missing pieces to the puzzle in terms of all the other video content and stuff we produce. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that. We're launching a newsletter because it's just become so busy. Every day it feels like there's 10 news items and stuff happening. So we wanted to condense all the good stuff down and make that easier for everyone to follow. But I guess our focus is just growing our educational database and our following at the moment.
Great. Questions from the audience? Here we go. Lasenka from Independent Reserve. Catch.
Hey, hi Alex. Fred, you guys do have kind of similar business models. Wanted to ask where you guys kind of differ and set yourselves apart on the crypto side particularly.
Yeah, I guess at Finder, we compare all the exchanges. Independent Reserve is on there. And you can see all the fees and all the prices for all the coins that you want to buy all around the world. And we do that in 20 different countries. We obviously run a YouTube channel which talks mainly more about trading I think Alex, is coming on the show, and I think I've been on Alex's show as well, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know if that's...
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've never thought of Fred's channel as a competitor. I think we cover really different things, actually. So, yeah.
Especially some of my interviews of recent have been quite spicy.
Okay.
Yeah. I can talk a bit about that if you want. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but...
Any questions from the audience? Here we go.
Hey, Mitchell from Bron ID. I kind of want to talk about total market capitalization and that graph in particular. I think it's one of the more interesting ones, particularly if you think Bitcoin can go above 60% again, and how high Bitcoin has to sustain to be the trading pair in terms of total market capitalization.
Few people will have a thought on that one.
I've got a really general comment, which is that I think and this might sound pessimistic, but I think most people who enter the market struggle to differentiate between the pairs. Technically, they differentiate between them from a branding point of view. So Bitcoin has the strongest brand, but the majority of people who are coming in and trading the other pairs, in our experience, are people who understand what Bitcoin is, and then understand that they're trying to invest in new technologies as far as infantile speculative investments as part of the far high risk corner of their portfolio, and they want to differentiate from one of those crypto pairs into others. And so I don't know how what that makes you think when it comes to your question. But to me, it says that you'll always see a spread on these pairs irrespective of the underlying fundamentals at the moment, and while we're in this speculative phase. I don't have a view as to what level Bitcoin will need to become the base trading pair for all crypto markets.
I think that, probably kind of an unpopular opinion, but Bitcoin domination index going above 60, going towards 65, 70 is a super unhealthy market. I think it doesn't matter what the market cap is, as long as the market cap of the space goes up in total. So for example, if Bitcoin is only 5% market cap in a $10 trillion market, it's still probably the most dominant of all cryptocurrencies or something along those lines. So it will sustain being the biggest trading pair that there is. I think like some of these will, top 10, top 20 maybe as we go down the path, will be trading pairs versus other cryptos if they sustain value that's pretty high. So for me, I want to see Bitcoin domination go down. Actually, I want to see it sub 20 in the next 5 years, if not sooner. That tells me that the market in total is growing all over the place. And that would still make Bitcoin probably by far the biggest asset. Could be worth 100,000 for all we know, something along those lines. And you still have a huge and robust marketplace.
I mean, the corollary on that as well is the FX market, where obviously US dollar trading is still the main pair. But I mean, you've seen over the last 30 years where you would have had yen domination was much higher. You've had euro domination come and go, pound domination. So or not domination, but much proportionally much higher trading. So in FX, you think about it, it's really about the top 15 pairs that trade fairly liquidly and that people would consider when they're trading, in that sphere. So there's no reason why we can't see the same happen in digital assets, where you end up with, probably say 8 or 9 like currencies in that top pair. Then you might have, some blockchains in there, and then you might have that killer DApp that ends up right up there as well. But I'm with George. It can't, if it goes past 70%, that's not good. But I think you can have it wane of its dominance and still have a good market.
Next question. I'll come over there in a minute, sir.
This question doesn't come from Independent Reserve, Australia's best exchange, if not the world's. But this comes just for you, Grant. In terms of IEOs, we've spoken about this a little bit tonight already. How do you see yourselves getting involved in that space at all?
Yeah, would be very reticent to be involved in that space. And mainly that's because of, I think at the moment, the best quality issuers would be very hard to attract onto a new platform. So you think about Binance are willing to support these projects. They guarantee market making, so they guarantee liquidity and things like that. So if you're the owner and you're the investors into a very, very high quality project, that's where you're sort of going to want to push yourself. And that's then when I get very uncomfortable about looking at doing an IEO of a second or third tier project who would sort of be comfortable with where, with not, of trying to get listed, but not having that underlying quality to really drive it forward. Like George, personally, I've been involved in a couple, and one of them recently, it was just a complete disaster. So the exchange claimed it sold it. It literally sold less than 20 grand worth of tokens. So yeah, I'm very skeptical over the IEO model like these guys at the moment.
Fred, what's happening with the OTC volumes at the moment, mate?
Yeah, OTC is really interesting. We're seeing like a lot of interest. I've been seeing a lot of interest in stable coins. I think a lot of people back to Bitcoin. And then just of recent, we've seen some really interesting diversification, which is interesting. And I think that's been, we've seen that in the general market as well. A lot of interest in some other new services that we've been getting inquiries about, which is, new. And I think it's fresh. I think it, goes to your point, Grant, as well about, institutions and things like that. I know you've talked about that in the past. And I think we're starting to get a lot of those inquiries to coming inbound, which is different. But it just gives us a good pathway of where we can go. And I think people are appreciating the service and they're getting used to that convenience. So I do think there is sort of an exchange customer and an OTC customer, and you use them for different things, and it's awesome. I think it's great that we've got a really healthy market, and the two are working, I think, quite nicely together.
Good stuff. Any questions? Yes, Cyril, sorry.
I'm hoping the BTC rise is not just a pump and dump, but if we knew who was buying, right? So if it was like 4 or 5 people, obviously someone de-identified, we could almost prove that it was a pump and dump. What do you think about that? Is there a chance that it could be a pump and dump?
I think it's really, really quickly. Maybe it's hard for Alex to jump in, actually. You got to yell, mate. You've got to second
Hang
time
on,
delay.
Nuggets,
It's quick on the buzzer.
Nuggets, did you have an answer to that?
You got to be quick on the buzzer, buddy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we
Thanks.
did a video about all the metrics that pointed to Bitcoin bottoming, and the whales accumulating was one of those. But compared to 6 or 12 months earlier, when Bitcoin was just going lower and lower, there's a lot of metrics that have turned up. So I don't think you can say it's just a few people sort of manipulating Bitcoin higher. I think there's a lot of things that are showing on-chain activity and rotation and all that sort of thing heading in the right direction.
Can I be a bit controversial? I tend to agree that it is a pump and dump, because I think there are a lot of headwinds that Bitcoin is facing, personally. I think with the launch of Facebook stablecoin, if that comes out, where they're trying to raise $1 billion and they're trying to raise money from MasterCard and Visa, the cost of acquisition of a new customer for Facebook is 0, right? It just goes via the Messenger app or via the WhatsApp app. And so that's a massive headwind to one of the core fundamentals of Bitcoin. I have extreme doubts myself about the true underlying value of Bitcoin. If I'm brutally honest, I'm happy to take any contrary opinion. But when you also marry that with the case law that's come out of the Tezos, the group class action against Tezos. The class actions actually was held in New York, and it was identified that because the number of Ethereum nodes that were supporting Tezos, 41% of the nodes were based in the US, they defined that even though Tezos did not allow US investors, case law has defined that was seen as falling under the US jurisdiction. So I think for me that has tremendous adverse effects on decentralization as a concept. Now, whether that's going to be appealed or not is a different issue, but I think there are so many headwinds that Bitcoin is facing that the fundamentals are not as strong as they were 2 years ago when Facebook weren't talking about this and Samsung weren't talking about their own stablecoin and Amazon rumored to be doing the same. So for me, it just doesn't feel quite right. And I don't know why. It just doesn't feel right. I'm having a conversation with a few people before coming on stage, and very much that feel that it just doesn't feel as if there's enough good news to be getting this Bitcoin up there.
Can I take a stab at that? I'd say that Facebook isn't competing with Bitcoin; it's competing with the U.S. dollar. And I would probably say that the headwinds around Bitcoin, for me, it's non-governmental, censorship-resistant money. That is not what Facebook is trying to become. And for me, as we have seen in recent activity globally from a financial perspective, there are all sorts of manipulations of fiat currencies happening. Money is being censored, capital controls in China, Venezuela, et cetera, et cetera. There are hyperinflationary events all the world. I think the specific use case around Bitcoin is a very different use case than it is for Facebook. Facebook wants to compete with the US dollar. Bitcoin wants to give people control of their money, where they have currencies that every day are being devalued and are worth less and less. Yes, Bitcoin's volatile, but these things are much more volatile. But also, you can own them even if you have a small, little, tiny mobile phone. You can get your hands on Bitcoin. This is something, and also it's not government issued. So for me, it's a different type of use case. Not to say that it might be overvalued or undervalued, but there's specific types of there's a specific reason why people are putting this into portfolios as a diversification against a lot of other asset classes.
So Bitcoin's not dead; it's still alive.
And going high.
Should have had George on the panel, but I had so many people wanting to debate that it was alive. The only person that I had that was going to debate it was dead was my mate Alex, mutual friend with Fred, who did a sterling job on stage up here with James Jansen,
Yeah.
Dr. James
He's a good
Jansen.
guy,
But I came up with that idea for the great debate last month with Tim Lee. And Tim was going to stand on stage and debate that Bitcoin is dead.
No,
So-
Bitcoin's dying, not dead.
Dying.
I think it has very limited use case. I
Mate,
completely
we should
agree.
have done the copyright correctly. But just a quick question. We just had an election. Doctor, how did you go? Not well. Mate, come on, talk us through. Talk us through it. Dr. James Jansen from the Science Party. Woo! How was it?
I'm not Prime Minister.
No.
You guys might not know I'm not Prime Minister, so it's a shame.
Okay.
But we did pretty well. We had the highest result in the Sydney electorate that we've ever had, so we went up to 3.5%.
Right.
So
Wow.
things are
Awesome.
on the up and up for the Science Party.
Perfect.
So maybe next time we'll be, in contention for a serious seat.
Perfect. So if anyone's disgruntled with their local parliament or their local politician or the party that they vote for, talk to Dr. James Jansen. He'll be here later on. He's coming down to the bar, so get all this political information out of him that you want.
I think I just want to add a couple of points, but to why, just to remind everyone, there's a lot of news right now, and everyone's probably feeling a little bit uncomfortable with prices and where it's moving. I just wanted to remind everyone about, the difficulty of Bitcoin just hit its all-time high. Petahashes are just flying up. There's going to be a 5.6% increase in difficulty coming up because of all the mining that's being added. That network effect, that defense and the value that's baked into every Bitcoin and the protection of it, that's the thing that keeps it safe and valuable. That's not going anywhere. That's huge amounts of people that are investing into that. I think another thing you got to look at is there's actually a massive brand around Bitcoin. To just globally get a brand out there, and I've spent personally a lot of money on branding and TV
Bitcoin.
for Finder.
Oh, sorry.
I've actually
Raven.
I'm just saying, to build a brand is very expensive, and there is a lot of communities and marketing and that effect around it that is not, like, it's just not going to stop today. And I think, Tim, if Bitcoin's, I think we had this challenge last time when I was sitting on stage, and I think you questioned me, I believe it was 1.5 years ago. You said the exact same thing to me, and I said, if Bitcoin's not any good, give me all your Bitcoin right now. So I'm going to give you the challenge. If you think it's going to die, hand it over to me right now.
Hand it over, baby.
We'll see what happens.
You buy it at a premium, though, will you?
But I would say a couple of things. And don't get me wrong, the technology behind Bitcoin is amazing. I think Bitcoin as an innovation was fantastic. I'm not disputing that. I think if you look at the abstract of the original white paper, that it says it's a digital, a peer-to-peer digital cash that enables the ability of cash to be transferred from one person to another without going through a financial institution. That is in the abstract. And the key thing is, if you have the Facebook stablecoin, and I take on board your point that it represents a different kind of infrastructure, it takes away the mantra of that abstract. And for me, people don't care if it's Bitcoin or if it's fried chips, whatever it is. If they can get money transferred instantaneously, internationally, for almost zero cost, that's all that people care about. And from a VC, any venture capital perspective, when you look at the cost of acquiring a customer, the CAC, it's a key metric that venture capitalists look at and financial people look at. The CAC for Facebook is 0. Right? They've got the Messenger app, they've got the WhatsApp app. Everything is in there. You just enable that to happen. Bitcoin, in terms of its actual adoption, I appreciate the brand value. I appreciate there's a brand value. But in terms of, what's the percentage of people that actually own Bitcoin? It's probably, and I'd be interested in everybody's opinion on that, it's probably between 0.5 and 1% maybe. Is that a reasonable estimation? I don't know.
Or less. Or less.
Right, okay.
But
can I jump in here as well?
Yeah, Nuggets, you're on, and then Dr. James, I think, has got a Nuggets, you're on.
I was just going to say, in terms of Facebook being a competitor, there's a lot of research around stablecoins being fairly boring, and the fact that it goes up in price is what keeps people coming back to crypto and checking their app and all that sort of thing. So I don't see that as a competitor in that way. But Bitcoin is different things to different people. So it's been a terrible store of value if you bought at the top, but if you're in Venezuela or Argentina, you've actually made money still. And if you're in China, and it's still a good medium of exchange to get money out of the country. And we've never had an asset like this, which is so many different things to different people. Once the Lightning Network continues to roll out, it's going to be a great payment system, even competitive for Visa and MasterCard. It's going to be cheaper for merchants, which we've never had before. In terms of brand and adoption, it's got this far with absolutely no brand and no company promoting it. And everyone is telling their friends about this sort of stuff. So we've never had an asset like this in history. I think we're going to see the biggest global FOMO of all time the next time we pass 10,000 or the old all-time highs. And I actually think that's when we're going to have a bigger bubble. So we're going to go to 100,000, then drop back to maybe 20,000.
You heard it here tonight, and we've got this filmed, Nugget, so you got to... You didn't say you're going to eat something, but that's all good. Hang on, Dr. James. Dr. James, I think you were abutting with Fred?
Yeah. So on the question of the all-time mining power, max that we've got right now, obviously, I strongly believe that the mining power is what does protect the network and what gives it value. Limited supply, you've got to work hard to get these Bitcoins, so you either mine or you buy it for cheaper, usually. The question is, though, I've been looking at a lot of YouTube channels where mining operations managers have been shutting down their businesses. They've been closing up, returning their video cards and the like. And I guess the question that I have is this legitimate, decentralized power that's coming online? Or is this a whole batch of new ASICs that are being purchased by some large